In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Hello and regards. This is Muhammad Suleiman Ahmadzai, here with a new session for you, my friends. In this video, I'll explain the interfaces for you when we go into search inside the WordPress program, and after this, you can watch the next videos as well. If we have more time, we'll work on the rest too. Try, before we work on its interface, to first set the page view to 0 with the button. That is, you can see at the bottom it shows 130. Here in the display, we can control the zoom out. With the wheel of the mouse, what can we do? We can zoom in and zoom out, but it's better to adjust its level from here. For example, we select it. We say its standard style, meaning its default mode, should be the default. Zoom in and zoom out. These are called the zoom slider. Alright, try in the program. This part at the top, as I told you, what do we call it? It's called the title bar, and it's also called the caption bar. The title strip or title bar. We said this part is called the page title. Here, it's called the application title, the program title. The program title, as I said, is always WordPress, but the page title, as long as the document is open in Notepad, it says untitled. That means untitled, which tells you that our file isn't saved. Whenever there's a document, it means the content isn't saved. But with names like Ahmadzai, a name that you have given it, it means the file has been saved. For example, if we tell it that this is our file, we save it, for instance, and name it Ahmadzai. Now, try it and you'll see the title appears here for you. Refer to this as the document title. A title means content saved. If document, it hasn't saved. So overall, with the terms we have, these two titles are divided into page title and application title. Altogether, it's called the title bar or caption bar. Here, we have a small bar called the Quick Access Toolbar, and its name is also written as Quick Access Toolbar. By default, there are 3 active buttons on this bar, Save, Undo, and Redo, but it actually has 8 functions. When you open this list, what do they call this list? Quick Access Toolbar Property. When you go into this property list, you can activate all 8 functions. So, in total, it gives you 8 functions. But by default, only 3 of them are active. When you install Windows, activate it, or reset it, only these 3 are enabled by default. So, it has 8 functions. When you activate all 8, it will show you all 8 functions. It's called the Quick Access Toolbar. Its list is also called Quick Access Toolbar Property. This part is referred to as the WordPad logo. The WordPad logo. The WordPad emblem. The WordPad program icon. By clicking with the mouse, a menu opens called the system menu. That's what they call it. I covered the system menu in the previous program, and here it opens with a right click. What do they call this other part? This other part is also called the control box. It's also called the caption buttons. I explained its function in the previous program. We have close, restore, maximize, and minimize. I also mentioned that in Windows 11, when you hover your cursor, several options appear that let you do some fitting tasks. And here, we can do this with a shortcut as well. You hold down the Windows key. If you press the Windows key together with the down arrow, it restores the window. If you press it with the up arrow, it maximizes the window. If you press the left arrow, for example, what does it do to the left? It pins the window, and if we press the right arrow, it does the same to the right. So, you can do these actions with shortcuts. Maximize, restore. If you press it again, if you're here, it will minimize the window. So these are the shortcuts that by default belong to Windows 11. Here, some were added in Windows 10, and in Windows 11, when you place your cursor here, a complete list opens up. You can do the same actions from there. And we've already mentioned before that you could also do these things using the system menu from here. When you press Alt plus space plus R, it restores the window. Alt plus space plus N performs the move action. You use the 4 arrow keys. You move it with the arrow keys. Alt plus space plus S was used for resizing. For that too, we use the arrow keys, without using the mouse. Alt plus space plus X would maximize the window, and Alt plus space plus C would close it. It would completely close the program, but there are many shortcuts for closing a program. One is Alt plus space plus C. Another is Alt plus F plus X, and there's also another shortcut, Alt plus F4. Whichever one you use, the program will close. If we want to use the mouse, there are many ways. We can come here and select Exit, or come here and choose Close, or click Close from here, or right-click here and select Close. In short, whichever way we want, we can close the program. After that, you have the control box and your title bar. What do they call this part? Each of these is called a tab. A tab is like a header. For example, the File tab or the File header. For example, the Home tab, the Home header. The View tab, for example, the View header. And this whole strip is called the tab bar. The tab bar is the strip of headers. Inside the tab bar, here we have another button called the ribbon collapse/expand button, which you can click. This part collapses and expands the ribbon. It opens and closes. And I already told you its shortcut in the previous session. The shortcut was Ctrl plus F1. On laptops, you also need to hold down the function key, otherwise, Ctrl plus F1 won't work directly. But on a desktop, you can just press Ctrl plus F1 directly. And this lets us, without having to do that, if you right-click at the top of the ribbon, this area is called the ribbon. Try it, you'll see it says minimize the ribbon. If you minimize it, it takes on a mode where, for example, when you click on the Home tab, its contents appear. You do your work. So when you move the mouse down, these get hidden. When you click, they show up, and then they hide themselves again. It hides and shows as needed. And if you don't want it minimized, you just turn off minimize. Also, you could minimize the ribbon from up here in the Quick Access Toolbar Properties. There's a section for minimizing the ribbon, or you can do it from there. Here, there's also a button, the Help button, which has the F1 shortcut. When you click it, it takes you into a category where you can get help about the program. But the Help program in Windows 10 and above only works when you're connected to the internet. In previous versions of Windows, like this one, you could search here. Some of the information would come from its own memory. For some information, there was an option to go online and get more details. But now, it doesn't even show the most basic information here. You have to be connected to the internet. So, what is this section called? It's called Ribbon, spelled R-I-B-B-O-N. The ribbon covers this whole area, and inside the ribbon, you can see each of these work lines. It separates each one into groups and sections. In Persian, we might casually call it a section or a category. It doesn't really matter, but their actual name is group. In computers, they're referred to as groups. For example, there's one group here, another separate group, and yet another one. These are their titles. These are called group titles. For instance, we say group paragraph, group insert, group editing. So, in everyday language, if we say section, part, or even category, it doesn't make a difference. Alright, so when we're editing or creating these ourselves on a daily basis. In more advanced programs, they're referred to as groups, and their titles are called group titles. Try to pause the cursor over anything and ask yourself, what is this? Because some things are just represented by their symbol. For example, this picture you see here is called the button image. And the one below it, which is labeled, is called the picture label. It's like a person who has both a face and a name. The button image and its label. But some of them don't have this. Then you'll see it only has a button image. Then it only has a button image. Some of them have a button image that also has its own label. For example, it's both a control and a shortcut. This picture itself, the button image of the scissors, also has cut neatly written below it. But in some others, we see that's not the case. Again, because we need to know their names, since we usually learn these things mechanically and sometimes don't really understand what they are. So we hover our cursor over it. A small box appears, which is called a screen tip. In the screen tip, it also tells us its name. For example, its name is Align Text Left, and it also shows its shortcut, which is Ctrl plus L. It's clearly written below, Align Text to the Left, meaning it aligns or attaches the text to the left side, and this one is for the right side. In short, it also tells you their names. This is clearly called a screen tip. In this way, we have a ruler called the horizontal ruler, but we don't have a vertical ruler. The Word program has both a horizontal and a vertical ruler. Here, we only have a horizontal ruler. The reason there's no vertical ruler is that in Word, our pages are separated according to A4 paper size. But here, it's not like that for us. Here, all our text content, everything, is like a single page. Overall, it appears like a general sheet. Visually, it appears as if it has several sheets. But in reality, it's just one page. Actually, when it comes to printing, it doesn't print like this. Because when we print, the printer uses paper that's A4 size. So, it automatically divides and prints according to A4 size. But here, for us, it's a single page. That's why we don't have a ruler here. In fact, we only have the horizontal, not the vertical. But as I said, when we print, it obviously doesn't show up like this, so if we want to print it. For example, we choose PDF. We save it in the Stop Save option to print it. Because we don't have a printer, it says it's become 10 pages. So try to see if it shows you 1 of 10, now it's 10 pages. These 10 pages will be printed separately. That means it doesn't show it all on one page for us, it prints it on 10 separate pages. If we say page 10 or page 9, it means the lower pages, 10, so it prints them separately, one by one. Well, in the WordPad program, as soon as you open it, it shows you just one general page. That's why we don't have a vertical ruler here. What else do we have here? Inside the program. Inside the rulers, we have something else here. They're called indentation points. These small dots are called indentation points. This type of bottom part of the end is called the status bar. We also had a status bar in Notepad. We also give the status bar the screen time. I'm zooming in. This means that something called a horizontal scroll bar is activated. This is called a vertical scroll bar. Vertical scroll bar and horizontal scroll bar. When it's zoomed out, it means we don't need to zoom in. You can see that it disappears. For now, for example, you see that there's nothing. Neither of them is there, because we can see the whole text ourselves, so we don't need to zoom or scroll up or down. Because we can see the entire text ourselves. It disappears from that place, and whenever you need to zoom in again, the horizontal scroll bar becomes active. The status bar is a kind of informational bar. One of its pieces of information is whether caps lock is on or off. This CAP that's written here shows that caps lock is on if it's active. If it's off, then it's off. As I mentioned before, if it's on and we type, the letters will be uppercase, and if it's off, the letters will be lowercase. It also works like the Shift key. We said if you hold Shift, the letters will be capitalized, and if you release Shift, they'll be lowercase. There's also a zoom slider here. With this minus button, we can zoom out the page. With this, we can zoom in on the page. Or we can use these buttons directly. This way, we can zoom in and zoom out. Or you can hold Control and use this bar to do whatever you want. Well, in Notepad, Control+, Control-, and Control-0 also work. But here, that doesn't work. We can only do this using the zoom slider. First, try to notice that we have this small menu. What did it call it? It's called the context menu. Context menu. In the contents of the text, generally, we call it text. If it's a number, we call it a number. We call it text. That's right. If we have a letter inside the text, in English, it's called a character. A character. It's a character. If it's a word, we call it a word. This is a word. If, for example, it's a sentence, it starts from here and goes to this part. It has a full stop. It has a dot. We call that a sentence. If several sentences are connected together, it gets bigger and there's a space created. What do we call that? Paragraph. Here, it's written as paragraph. And again, when several paragraphs come together to make up a page, we call that a page. But when several pages come together, like when we printed earlier, they call that a document, a file. For example, when we open a document, it might have 10 pages. For instance, this itself is a document. Because this is not just one page. One sheet of it is a page. Let me open a document. It opens a document for us like this. Now let's come to these small dots. Indentation points are things used in a line for a certain reason. They're used for this same space. For example, I selected the text. Earlier I said, what's the shortcut for selecting text? Control-A. If we don't use Control-A, we can select it here with the mouse like this. If that doesn't work, we can right select Alt here. Try to remember, this is called right indent. This creates as much space as you want for the text from the right side. That means, when we place this point here, the content won't be written from this point to the right anymore. In other words, we set the text spacing so that nothing is written beyond 1 inch to this side, or we can say no. So, I place this right indent point here. And if I select its left option as well, left indent means my text will have a 1 inch space from the left side, and it will be spaced out by 1 inch. If we want to be more specific, for example, the first line's indent is called first line indent. If we say that the first line, for example, should have a ½ inch space, but the following lines, which is called hanging, should have a 1 inch space. The next line should have a 1 inch space, but the first line of the paragraph should have only ½ inch or even no space at all. We say the first line should have no space, set to 0, but the hanging indent, the following lines, should have a 1 inch space. Again, if we didn't want this, we could just remove it. We can set it aside for now. It's also at the point above. If we grab it from the top, This only changes the spacing for the following lines. If we grab this top point, but if we grab it from this lower point, it's called a full left indent. Look, there are 2 points here. Here, if we grab it from the bottom, it does a full left indent from the left side. It adds spacing to both the first line and all the following lines. Whereas if we use this level, grabbing from the upper point, we see that it only adds spacing to the following lines. But if we grab it from this top point, it only indents the first line. First line indent, left indent, hanging, and right indent. Finally, dear friends, I kindly ask that if you found the videos useful, please like them to support us and help the channel grow. Subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next sessions. Goodbye.